We're live. Alright. Hey, I'm CL15. I'm Flip, and this is Pig. We're here on PigPig
Yeah.
A1. We've been wandering around the map for like an hour and a half now, and we kind of discussed some areas and have a few ideas that we wanted to share.
We also played in a few of the TF2 maps test, and it was a pretty fun map, but there's some cheese spots and just some cheese strategies, some
Yeah.
degenerate gameplay.
We're
It's a
just gonna
very
make some.
fun map, but um,
I was gonna
yeah.
say, we're just gonna make some random suggestions, and by no means do you have to like listen to us about how to change your map, but if anything kind of like inspires you, feel free to grab onto it. But yeah, should we just get into it, Pig?
Yeah. With
Alright.
the starting area, this is just me. I would like to move these health kits to where this, I don't know,
Boiler?
tanker is. Yeah.
Oh,
So it's
you
just
think
there's
that kind
not
of
a
would
tanker and there's just a health kit.
kind of reminds me of Barn Blitz, yeah. But
Yeah, it makes it more centralized.
I think the two notes I had kind of had for this front area before we get into the first point is this roof here. It's overly steep. It makes combat very awkward. Just someone being able to plan an object this steep feels a little unusual. It could probably be flattened. I know that's a nitpick. The other thing is you do have some sightlines into spawn, and kind of when we talk about maybe suggestions for adjusting an area, they might resolve this. But I do think it is kind of awkward that a sniper is able to shoot all the way here into that kind of doorway. But yeah, do you want to talk about the areas, Pig?
Um, First points, bat rework on the left.
Mm-hmm.
So first things first, going into this building, this area down here kind of feels unneeded. And what we thought is that you'd close this window as seen before, and you'll move the staircase in so it actually comes like here, and it will come up a little bit higher. So our whole concept would be, first things first, you do the painstaking task of widening around the main, so where the cart comes through. We said like 3 dispenser lengths would be pretty good.
Yeah, I think your plank there is a pretty good indication. And I know it's a pain to move things in hammer, but
Yeah.
I think it would benefit from kind of more space. And to elaborate on what Pig's talking about here, instead of having a kind of low ground entrance, this is Blue's only route to kind of get to high ground. So having a staircase up and then making it about level and just having a straightaway feels like it'd be a much better kind of area. And the kind of benefit of having that is I think red kind of holds here on these bats, and it's a lot more interesting being forced to rotate in between two chokes. This is kind of like you have to rotate to spam left, and that gives a lot of space on the right. If you stay on right, then there's a chance that they can push left. Without that, it kind of becomes a little bit of this top area is just kind of red can't really reclaim up here. So another big change that we're going to suggest is kind of a doorway right about here, I think. Yep, coming out to this wall, and it doesn't really link well with some of these doors, but any sort of doorway here coming out onto the bats with that expanded bat platform from these 3 dispenser links, we feel like would be a good
Also,
idea.
if the door is there, we'd have to close this up. Probably have a little bit more space on this
Mm-hmm.
side.
I would probably suggest moving this kind of chicken wire fence out and having more bat space here.
Mhm.
So kind of a little bit more forward. So that way there's also, you don't enable the sniper sight line, and the forward spot means any sniper sniping has to be a lot closer to choke.
Mhm.
But anyway, should we move on to our next points?
Um, yeah.
Okay, so I think the next thing we discussed is this top area is, if it was to be kind of like more of a real bats, then it shouldn't really connect too many areas. Where Pig's standing right now, that would probably get deleted. I'd say it'd be cut off right here, about where the pillar is. So this area is kind of like Red can stand here, they can retreat out that way, they can drop down and leave main if they want to, but it shouldn't like connect to too many other things. As part of that, yeah, that window there would kind of be sealed, um,
Yeah.
but I think it.
So, like, seal this window and then just delete this platform.
Mhm. And then just kind of like moving from left to right sequentially in no order of importance. We also think the point could probably be afford to be moved further back, anywhere
So we
kind of
were we
like
were kind
straight
of
away
thinking
or
of
kind
the
of
point
left.
being moved here
Yeah.
because it can make an interesting retake where you come in and try and lock out the blue again.
I think it would
We'll
also.
get to that a little later on.
Yep. And it also, I think it helps prevent a little bit of snowballing as people kind of have an idea of when to retreat because they're trying to hold the point in the first place. Besides that, moving further onto the right here, we think this right route could use a few adjustments. For starters, instead of the door having come out sort of on the point, we think it could come out sort of on this slope onto the high ground. or not onto this high ground because
So we would kind of delete
because
this high ground here.
yeah, I think the word I think would be most accurate, hopefully not rude, is that this kind of serves as player bait. It keeps players in a very trapped position where they're pretty much surrounded. Instead, it should either be deleted or lowered a lot. It should be
Yeah.
kind of like incentivized as somewhere to stand because it really isn't that great of a spot. To kind of
I mean, I
adjust that,
mean,
it could
the
be
the reason that we move the bats over there is because you can just get flanked too easily from this right side. So an
mhm,
Uber can come in, even if you have like a good, I don't know, pre-fire on them, they can just pop here and still have like a good
yeah,
70% Uber
an
to just
enclosed
wreck
Uber could just
everyone
come
that's
here.
just baited up into building up here.
And because the areas behind are so compact, as soon as red the defending team loses control of that platform, they've just lost the point in the entire area.
Yeah.
So anyway, this route would kind of come in where this lower area is. There'd be a cover piece to kind of accommodate, but I think the door here would enable blue to kind of take this side and red having that side. And obviously one side is worse than the other, but at least it gives a blue kind of like an option
Well,
to get in and
I,
get out.
I I don't think that there should be high ground here. I feel like it should be a cover piece across so that blue can't spam into the
Or
doorway.
red, yeah.
So basically, or sorry, red. So the blue players can cross this doorway for free, and then they'd have a door that kind of leads into the wall here,
So we're thinking
and they
a
would loop
second
back
door
around,
here. That would loop back
come
in.
over here, and then the blue players would be able to shoot them
Hmm.
kind of like from here
So the flank route
as
would
they're
kind of
leaving
open
this door.
a door through here, and then a sealed wall here, so we wouldn't have this back area, and then kind
Mhm.
of a immediate kind of like rotation committal back in here. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the staircase more. But that way, I think you kind of have an interesting choice of routes, and if you're trying to go in a way a little bit behind, you're still spotted by players from bats. So kind of like a nice visibility trick there.
This probably isn't perfect and will have to be, like tweaked a lot because there is the fear of players just, keep going, just go
Just keep
behind.
getting behind. Yeah, it's just kind of it's a work in progress, but just a few suggestions that we
Yeah,
just wanted to bounce off. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about this right route, right? So this staircase here um, is a little bit too extreme because once you kind of get up top, it results in you kind of having the entire red team's exit. So probably this would need to be reduced, um, maybe about to the height of these quick climb bags. So a lot less extreme of a staircase. And that kind of just means it's not as bad of a if you see someone go behind, you can fight them without being at a huge height disadvantage.
yeah.
Being able to walk up as well, if this quick climb bag was just kind of like a ramp, a mini ramp just up top, seems like it really help red team be able to hold a lot of the space. And also, I'd like to see them potentially be able to even hold this area, have a nice crossfire to hold the point, regardless of whether you put it closer forward or a little bit further back. As for this kind of back area, I think this log area, it pulls too much away from the combat. This should either be a sealed wall or a very kind of like tight zone. This room has potential for something, but I think this back area adds a little bit too much excess to the map. I think the bottom
Yeah.
should kind of cut off there and a wall should be added here.
Hmm.
Um, should we move on then?
Um, yeah, I think we should move on to how this door is over here.
Okay, so
I
kind of,
feel it might be a good idea because we're removing this high ground on this side. Blue team is probably going to have to use this high ground to repush this area. Say red aggresses back in. So because we're removing that height, you might want a little like battlements area coming out here that also connect left. And then I'd also put, since we're opening this door here, I'd put a closed door here.
yeah, so moving on to second, this would be a sealed shutter, right? Or,
Yeah,
I don't know what you call
like
those,
a
but kind
closed
of like
door.
a closed door until, because we moved the point upwards as well, a stalling mechanic was used. So to prevent players from kind of getting rolled, which I bet is very common, a lot of maps use stalling mechanics, and I think even if you're not a huge fan of them, it might be a good idea to at least,
Turntable. Use the
yeah, it
turntable.
might be a good idea to at least use one to get a good gauge of what the hold is like, rather than what getting rolled is like. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we were thinking a turntable right there where Pig is standing. It could just be a railroad track running along that way, and then it turns slowly. Once the turntable's open, this left route can be enabled. At least this way, even though they lead to the same area, the left route kind of results in you being able to take high ground. This way forces you to kind of like fight up a slope, where if there's anyone holding it, they don't need to worry. It helps
Mhm.
stop a snowballing just a little bit. As for the actual routes, this top route, this wall here, I'm going to put a dispenser there, we suggest kind of be removed. I'm sure there was, I think, if I remember correctly, there was kind of complaints about this area being claustrophobic, Dust Bowl-esque. I think if this wall was busted open and it was just replaced with a little handrail along the bottom edge, then you would have a lot more playable space and kind of like an interesting spam angle to play off.
Yeah.
Chicken wire fence
And
creates an
then
interesting kind of spam
also
windows.
inside of this room, I would just cut this off.
Yeah,
Uh,
so if you want to keep the health and medium ammo, you could just make it
then
into a little alcove instead of
what I would actually do instead is that I would cut off this alcove and I would just put a door here with like, you know what I mean, like a little like insert for the health and ammo right
oh
here.
yeah, sure. That's the simplest fix.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's one concern, which is kind of like spam and sniper angles. I think it should be fine as long as you just keep some props, some chicken wire fence around. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, moving on, we talked about the left route and the high ground. Let's talk about the right route. So, there is a big problem about this right route of it being way too far away from the combat, and then this additional area kind of just being pointless. I think this outside area should
Yeah,
kind of be
I
axed.
think you already knew about this.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean, just being
And I
axed.
think instead of having this lower route, it would be interesting to give the attacking team another option to try to get onto the high ground. So what we were thinking is having this doorway, keep this doorway, but move it
Move
about
it
in a
forward
line.
to this wood post.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna put it there for now. And then it's like a potential staircase going up and over to the left and coming out here, almost kind of where you have the crate, and to give red team ability to kind of hold this instead of just having a simple door. If this wall was busted and there was a half railing, the half
Yeah,
railing
so
could
like
look down
here, Flip. If
onto
you
the
kind of no clip
staircase.
through, you can kind of see where the wall would be.
Yep.
So it's like imagine that you're walking into this room, and then you have people with massive high ground
So where I am
right
now
to
would
the
be
left of you.
so where I guess I should outline this. This would entirely be an enclosed area.
Yeah,
This
it
would be
would.
a handrail, and then this where pig is would be the staircase up and
And
around.
then and then by the time I get here, I would be going up, and then there'd be a landing, and then there'd be another staircase up, busting into here.
Yep, a
So
little
if
bit.
anyone has Uber, they have to go early, and by the time they get to the top of the staircase, they're 50%.
Yeah.
So it'd mainly be like a demo Uber that you would take in
Mhm.
and just spam everyone. Because demos, like, they have advantage on low ground as well.
Mhm. And then to kind of compensate for that, I'd say a lot of other areas you can cut out a little bit of the space that's not used, kind of like that large tree
Yeah.
or other areas. Unless you really like that tree.
Another complaint that I have with these trees is that they're really awkward to fight people in some conditions.
This
Like if
one's
a
kind of
soldier's in the
fine,
air,
yeah.
it's impossible to see them.
Snakewater lost a tree for that exact reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
So
think
I would try and keep those trees out of the combat
besides that,
space.
let's move back inside. And then I think one of the things we want to talk about is this route, which we'll get to in a moment, but also card clearance. Same topic kind of here, where we think it could be moved kind of 3 dispenser lengths out.
Yeah.
Maybe like the width of a sign. It's just, there
And
is a
it
little
doesn't
bit,
have to be exactly 3 dispenser lengths. Like
just roughly.
probably do like 64 or I don't know.
120?
What's 64 plus 32? That number.
Too wide? Alright.
So like 332 notches.
And then I guess the other thing we had a comment about is this saw doesn't really do anything. It is kind of in a funny location. But instead, we think it'd be a lot more interesting if this crate route was expanded, so it was wider, and there was a saw in it as well. It doesn't have to move back and forth if you don't want it to. But that would create a very interesting proposition of taking an Uber through this kind of lower route, getting a
Mhm.
chance to get a very, very juicy Uber kind of in things, but you also have a risk of being able to get stopped if you're
So
air blasted into a
it's
saw.
3 a.m. so Flip's kind of quiet. I don't know if he said this or not, but
Yeah.
I feel like
Am I?
this whole high ground here should be removed and then just turned into a large doorway, and then you'd have that saw. So like I could just see anyone trying to pull some like shenanigans coming through here. Like maybe they tried an Uber or something, I don't know, and they just get air blasted into the saw. I think that would be quite fun. Keep the fun mechanic.
Yep. And then moving on, let's talk a little bit about these spawns. So the first spawn, instead of being back there, we think should just be this blue last spawn. It kind of
Yeah.
is weird having these two
So
spawns close together, and
if
they're
we're fighting the
functionally
first
identical.
point, red would spawn here.
Hmm.
And then after the first point is capped, that would lock down. You know,
Yeah.
they wouldn't spawn there anymore.
And we'll talk about where we. I'll just fly over there now. I think the next spawn should be either in this cliff face or kind of like on a hill, anywhere kind of like around here.
Yeah.
Behind
So
the truck would be okay.
when you're fighting B, you would spawn back here.
Hmm.
You'd have to reaggress. Another thing Are we skipping too far ahead? Did we
No, no.
finish everything?
Well, we can talk about this. So that kind of finishes up the second point. Now we should talk about the transitional area from second to last. I think the big note was some of these areas and props are rather girthy, I guess. Like for these logs, it feels like you could get away with just the chicken wire fences. The framing around it kind of makes it really bulky. And for areas like
Yeah.
this, these rocks are nice, but not being able to get over them because of this tree is a very awkward kind of like mechanic to mess around with.
Yeah.
It
I
feels like
would
this
just
tree isn't very useful.
I would throw the tree out and then I would remove this rock here and this cover piece here.
Yeah, the cover could probably come at an angle closer to the
And then
rocks.
another thing would be probably remove some of this stuff and try and prioritize players fighting B to push in through this tiny door. So they would like, you know what I mean?
You're talking about
When
the
they're fighting
defending
B and
team,
they're
yeah.
spawning back there, the defenders would push through that door.
So this has the interesting effect of the defenders coming in from the right. They can have a good right hold, but they give up the high ground on the left. And as soon as they get stuffed out of this door, they no longer can hold this point. And most players will
Yeah,
recognize stuffing through a door this small isn't very good. They'll retreat, and instead of getting a wipe, you'll kind of have an interesting retreat hold, which is kind of what you want, or
yeah.
what you should expect more players to do, to have a good sense of how to leave.
Mhm.
But yeah, for the most part, it's hard to get a gauge on this kind of right transitional area because most of the times teams just wiped or you could just get steamrolled through. But
Yeah.
in
I
general,
think with the other point, you had to get wiped in order to actually get this far. It
hmm
was
yeah,
pretty brutal.
because the spawn was kind of so close. I can agree with that.
Yeah,
I do think that it would be interesting to see a little bit of height variation or something like a bit more play with this orange house building. I think this is probably one of the most awkward kind of like zones on the map.
yeah.
But I don't really have too much great advice beyond I think when you come through the strutter, coming out onto low ground, pushing last is rather unappealing.
Mhm.
And it doesn't give you much of an ability to do anything unless you're a sniper.
Oh, and then another thing real quick, I really don't like this log. It just kind of, it's impeding on the cart track,
Oh
and
yeah.
it just is awkward to fight around.
It also doesn't really give you much more ability to get elevation or anything. You could have
Yeah.
just jumped up that normally now that I think about it. It is kind of in the way, huh?
Hmm.
But yeah. Do you want to talk about a little bit further pushing into last?
Um, sure. I think we should probably talk about this though.
Yeah, sure. Let's start by talking about this railway. It is kind of like the first kind of entrance stroke to last. If red is retreating slowly, they'll probably hold this big gate. And because of that, and also because they can reclaim this area, we think that it should be larger, taller, and then I think also duplicated over. And with that duplicated over space, make this slope a lot gentler and that width that you get from that could be used to make this side room wider, easier to kind of spam out that left from. Because currently, as
what
is, it's
basically
very claustrophobic.
basically what he meant in like normal terms is that raise this choke here so it's higher. I feel like it's a little bit too, I don't know. It's really hard to bust through this as a soldier. There's no way that I can like jump, you know? And then this ramp here is a little too steep. So we thought if you just picked up all of last, I know it's a total pain in the ass, but if you pick up last, then you just kind of shift it over like, you know, that distance. And then you widen this door here. It'd make pushing through this door a lot easier. You know, it wouldn't be as claustrophobic. That would help a lot. And it would just make this uh, steep slope a lot less awkward.
Yeah, all
I
right.
mean, doing these big like shifts are a total pain in the ass, but it's something that you only really have to do once.
Hmm.
So it's totally worth it.
All right, do you want to move on to talking about last?
Um, sure.
All right, so let's start left and then go right, I think. So this room has a very awkward kind of like height variation with a
Yeah.
close slope door. I think instead the ramp should be entering the room. The room should be as flat as possible, kind of there towards the front, and then there should be a staircase, kind of like a steep staircase here on the left going up
Yeah.
instead.
So
And
basically, like where I'm standing right now, this would be the level of this entire like box room. It would just be flat, and then there would be a door right here
yeah, instead of having a door
connecting
come
into the
out in
choke,
front of the
rather than
choke,
connecting right here. It would
it
kind
could
of
connect
connect
to the
into the
small
choke,
decks. hmm And then that
or
would be sealed.
maybe I don't know. I actually
I
feel
think
kind of iffy about that suggestion.
it would be fine both ways, I think. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's something you can play around with. As for this
And
left
then
route, it
once this room's floor is flat, I would try and move this staircase to where we're standing right now. So you'd start to climb up around here.
mhm. And then this cover piece would be adjusted, so this route would be sealed where Pig is walking right now,
Yeah, where I am, there'd be like a glass window there. So it's kind
and
of like pulling this wall forward here.
and
And
then
then,
the door would be where this boiler is. I can't really frame it well, but the same door that you kind of had could come out that way. And then there also could be another exit here. And this exit would serve to take you onto the high ground, essentially a staircase instead of this staircase. And I'd probably just kind of like Uno reverse them. So staircase goes there, high ground kind of goes out and makes a little L.
Mhm.
That way red kind of has high ground here that they own as long as they have this right room, but blue can take that pushing up or they can push through choke and take a lot of space. So you kind of have an interesting, blue has targets to push for that they can
Mhm.
choose. Um, let's move over to the right side since you're already on your way there. This right corner kind of results in a very awkward case here. Being able to hide in this corner, even spam from this, makes it really difficult to push because that's also incredibly hard to clear because you're being shot by the entire enemy team while you're turning around doing this 180. But if you do manage to push this right side, um, I think that this building here, it kind of just links onto low ground and not out a very good kind of tiny door. Where this full ammo pack, it'd be interesting if you introduce some height variation, some like medium high ground here next to the point, to
Yeah,
kind of like be
something
able to
something
cut
like a
off.
64 unit, just like jump, and then maybe a handrail across or something.
Yeah,
So that people on this side can't just quickly jump up.
yeah. So a little
They have
bit
to
of high
work their
ground
way
you can work
around.
off, and that can even have a little bit of play with the choke, depending on how you
Mhm.
want to put your cover piece and whatnot. Um, But yeah, I think that's pretty much our main thoughts on the map, our main suggestions from
Yeah.
running through.
I would say lastly before we go, this should be a little wider here. So kind of pick up from this point on the forward on the map and just drag it over that way.
The main
Just
choke.
widen this
Yeah,
choke. Yeah.
sure. Anything else?
Oh, also the skybox. You probably already know about
Well,
this, but
it's
it's
cl-
pretty
it's
short.
pretty low for
Yeah.
just in general. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. I think I'm gonna end the recording there.
Yeah. It's a very cool map. I like it. I think it's
Same.
pretty cool.
Looking forward to see how it pans out.